The year was 1900. A towering lighthouse stood sentinel on Eilean Mor, a remote island in Scotland's Outer Hebrides, where 3 men were meant to keep its light burning through the endless winter nights. But when a relief ship arrived on December 26th, they found something that would haunt maritime history forever. The lighthouse was dark, the keepers were gone, and the only witnesses were the unforgiving Atlantic waves. Eilean Mor, meaning Big Island in Gaelic, was one of the most isolated outposts in the British Isles. Part of the Flannan Isles, this barren rock sat 20 miles west of the Isle of Lewis, battered by some of the most violent seas in the world. The lighthouse that crowned its highest point had been operational for barely a year, built to guide ships through these treacherous waters where countless vessels had met their doom. 3 experienced men had been stationed there that December. James Ducat, the principal keeper, was a seasoned lighthouse veteran with decades of service. Thomas Marshall served as the second assistant, known for his reliability and steady nerves. And Donald MacArthur, the occasional keeper, had been called in to cover for another man who had fallen ill. These weren't novices. They were professional mariners who understood the sea's moods and the lighthouse's critical importance. The last contact with the outside world came on December 15th, when the lighthouse's beam was visible from passing ships. For 11 days, everything seemed normal. The light cut through the darkness each night, a beacon of safety in the storm-lashed Atlantic. But on December 26th, the steamship Arctur was making its way through the waters when the captain noticed something alarming. Where the Flannan light should have been guiding them, there was only darkness. The relief vessel Hesperus was already en route, carrying supplies, and Joseph Moore, who was coming to replace one of the keepers for his scheduled rotation. When Moore stepped onto the island's small jetty, an eerie silence greeted him. The lighthouse stood intact, its lens and mechanism undamaged. But no one answered his calls. The flagstaff was bare when it should have displayed the proper signals. Even more disturbing, the kitchen table was set for a meal that was never eaten, with an overturned chair suggesting someone had left in tremendous haste. Moore's investigation revealed increasingly puzzling details. The lighthouse's log entries stopped abruptly on December 15th, with the final entry written in Ducat's careful handwriting, noting severe winds and storms. But here's where the mystery deepens. Weather records from the mainland showed that December 15th had been relatively calm in the area. The truly violent storms didn't hit the region until several days later, long after the keepers had vanished. In the keepers' quarters, 2 sets of oilskins and boots were missing, suggesting 2 men had gone outside together. The 3rd set remained hanging on its peg. This was highly unusual, as lighthouse protocol dictated that one keeper must always remain at the station. Never would all 3 men leave their post, especially not during rough weather. It went against every rule of lighthouse operation and maritime safety. The island itself offered few clues, but many questions. A heavy iron railings at the lighthouse's base, designed to withstand the worst Atlantic storms, had been twisted and damaged. Equipment that should have been secured was found scattered, yet the lighthouse structure remained untouched, its rooms tidy, except for that hastily abandoned meal. It was as if the sea had reached up with invisible hands to pluck the men away while leaving everything else precisely in place. Theories emerged almost immediately. Some suggested a rogue wave, one of those mountainous walls of water that can appear without warning in the North Atlantic, had swept the men to their doom while they attempted repairs outside. Others proposed that two keepers had ventured out during a storm to secure equipment, only to be claimed by the sea, while the third man, witnessing their fate, had either jumped in attempting a rescue or been driven mad by isolation and guilt. But the timeline didn't fit these explanations. If the men had disappeared on December 15th, when the final log entry was made, why did some ships report seeing the light burning for several days after? And what about those weather discrepancies? The log described storms that meteorological records insist weren't happening at that time. More disturbing theories surfaced from the island's dark history. The Flannan Isles were known in local folklore as places where strange things happened. Ancient Celtic legends spoke of spirits that could lure men to their doom, of islands that existed between worlds. Some locals whispered that the three keepers had encountered something far more sinister than bad weather. In the isolated communities of the Outer Hebrides, where ancient beliefs ran as deep as the surrounding ocean, supernatural explanations seemed no more unlikely than natural ones. The official investigation concluded that the keepers had likely been swept away by a massive wave while attempting to secure storm damage. It was a rational explanation that satisfied bureaucrats and insurance companies, but it satisfied no one who understood the sea and the men who worked upon it. Experienced lighthouse keepers didn't make the kinds of mistakes the official report suggested. They didn't all leave their post. They didn't ignore safety protocols that had been drilled into them over years of service. December 1900 marked the beginning of one of Scotland's most enduring unsolved mysteries. The Eilean Mor lighthouse was automated decades later, removing the need for human keepers who might vanish into the Atlantic night. But the questions remain. 3 experienced men disappeared without a trace from a fortress-like lighthouse on a tiny island surrounded by empty ocean. No bodies were ever recovered. No definitive explanation was ever proven. What force was powerful enough to make 3 seasoned mariners abandon their sacred duty and disappear forever into the December darkness, leaving behind only an empty lighthouse and a mystery that has haunted Scotland for over a century?